A lot of my videos tend to concentrate on arcadey games. They're filled with action, mechanics that aren't all that difficult to explain, and they make for entertaining vids. You know, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, I don't love a good story, or a slower paced game in general. One genre that does the job well for me is the so-called cinematic platformer, a genre that's kind of been out of fashion for a while now. Jordan Mechner's Prince of Persia lit the fuse with a prince that was altogether more human than most video game characters. He could only jump so far, he'd be evenly matched with all his enemies, and he'd often have to use his wits to get out of tight spots. Persia codified the technical side of this offshoot. A lot of other games in the genre, when you strip them down to their building blocks, control a lot like Prince of Persia, and are even designed quite similarly in places. However, the cinematic side of the equation was provided by a French guy named Eric Chahi, who, inspired by Prince of Persia, New Horizons in video game storytelling and sheer bloody-minded improvisation, created Another World, one of the most important titles ever to come out of Europe. I really understate the importance of Another World and how it opened the doors for all manner of other more exotic titles. Without it there'd be no Echo, no Myst, no Shadow of the Colossus. Games directly influenced by Another World today. Look at Limbo, one of the big indie successes of recent times, and a game that still largely travels with the Another World formula, the stranger in a strange land. Of course, more cinematic platformers followed in Another World's wake. In the years after, we had Blizzard's grim graphic comic book-esque Blackthorn, the ever kooky Oddworld series, and Eric Chahi's next project, the sadly underrated Heart of Darkness. Good games all. And of course, we had Flashback, another French-made cinematic platformer in which you control a young government agent named Conrad B. Hart on his quest to, well, find out who the hell he is and just what the hell he's doing. It's often been said that Flashback is the sequel to Another World. Why, they share the same publisher, a similar feel, and a similar faceless protagonist. But Flashback is in fact the brainchild of a wholly different Frenchman named Paul Cuisset, a man also responsible for games like Shaq Fu and Amy. Seems unfair to immediately mention that, but really it's all trivia at the end of the day, because no matter what, Paul Cuisset's reputation as a man worthy of respect was sealed with Flashback and Flashback alone. Cuisset's game is perhaps the tightest of all the cinematic platformers, using the genre to tell a classic sci-fi story with locales and settings more than worthy of cinema. It proved that cinematic platformers could provide action and drama as strong as any arcade title, without in any way compromising the game's narrative. We struggle with today, the old problem, let's call it GTA 4's folly, of trying to combine a deep, meaningful and complex storyline with gameplay usually powered by ever more creative and violent forms of murder, was dealt with admirably by Flashback. While times may have been somewhat simpler then, it's still worth looking at. Indeed, there's so much here it's hard to know where to start. Perhaps would be the best bet, mainly because there's a hell of a lot of them, big and small. I mean, one could just spout Another World graphics, Prince of Persia gameplay and move on, but that's not really the case. And if you know me, you damn well know that's not what I'm gonna do. Really, it's quite fun to try and break down all of the game's many inspirations, whether they're true or not. So let's just go for it, eh? On your marks, get ready, go! Akira, Blade Runner, Total Recall, The Running Man, Star Wars, 1984, H.R. Geiger, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Star Trek, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Buck Rogers, Brutalism, Solaris, They Live, Red Dwarf, Akira again, Blade Runner again, James Cameron's Foot Worship, and the cover of the SNES game Phalanx. You get the picture, there's a fair amount going on here. Now, whether you believe all of these influences or not, it's clear that Paul Cuisset has quite the passion for sci-fi. There's so much tribute going on, it's almost like a Tarantino movie. Which is actually quite an apt comparison, because somehow this hodgepodge of influences is transformed into a silky smooth whole that's a joy to experience. Now sure, there is the odd plot hole here and there. One supposes really that this highly advanced race of aliens never got around to inventing restraints, but really it's all part of the fun. Is it the almost minimal and metaphorical deep experience that Another World is? Well, not really. But it's different. More, well, cinematic for lack of a better word. A whipping yarn, a bloody good knockabout. And hey, those graphics. What about them, eh? The faceless protagonists, the goo-ward shades, those sinister locales. That's French style alright. Right from the word go, Flashback produces a beautiful 2D world unlike any other. The first stage is a lush forest that you've just crashed into, knowing nothing except your name and that some boxy thing was just beside you. As a player, you have no idea where you are. Is it Earth? You know, it could be, but some things just don't feel right. Even the ambiguity of the title helps as well. Flashback. Well, have we gone back in time? Is this one of Conrad's past lives? Is this a sort of Buddhist-y game? You know, what is it? Graphics and story go hand in hand to create a mood right from the first screen. It helps when you have precious little to go on, and it makes you want to know more and more. And as the game continues, it never stops creating memorable visuals. The soulless underground city of New Washington is thoroughly grey and unappealing to look at, but it's a conscious choice on the part of the artists. Level ramps up to 11 when you finally reach the blue-shaded murky depths of Morph, the home planet of our antagonistic aliens. Is Conrad ever remotely comfortable with his surroundings? Even when he returns to Earth, the game immediately sees that as the point to place its longest stretch of full-on action shooting. And when you're lost, well, you're well and truly lost. The flick screen approach so often used in cinematic games works brilliantly here, as it did in Another World. Not only do you always await a new challenge, but you never know what you're going to see next, and so many times you pause, grab your gun and roll into the next scene, in the hopes that you'll get the drop on somebody. There's some real suspense here, believe me. Platformers all try to have their own way of dealing with it, perhaps the part of the game that jives the least with what they want their feel to be. Games like the Oddworld series and Limbo abandon it completely. If Abe or the kid get into a fight, they're utterly screwed and they die in one hit. Therefore they need to use their cunning and not be seen in order to get around hostiles. Abe's powers of mind control and the kid's ability to puzzle his way out of problems will see them both through. On the other side of the scale, we have Blackthorn, in which our hero's a shotgun-toting badass who thinks nothing of capping guys without even looking at them. I mean, this game even has a cover system. And the original Prince of Persia would also be on this side. The combat here is always one-on-one and always fair. Two opponents, evenly matched, clashing their swords together in the style of Errol Flynn. Delphine's games, though, Another World and Flashback, would be firmly in the middle of the scale. Both Esther Knight Chaikin and Conrad B. Hart can use weapons, but they're still human, and they won't last long just by standing and fighting. They'll still need to use their brains to draw enemies out, or even make them fall foul of their own traps. This manifests itself in various ways, from the simple strategy of readying your gun before a fight to get the drop on someone, to more specific strategies for certain enemies. In early levels, it's using stones to distract mutants and tricking them into either turning their back on you or triggering their own gun turrets. Against the cops, it's careful use of the force field to defend yourself against their comeback shots. Against cyborgs and especially morphs, it's all about dexterity and leading them out into more open spaces. In tight areas, morphs in particular are usually deadly. They're a concrete strategy for pretty much every enemy. Some of whom, like the orbs that do little except glide slowly toward you, can be a bit tedious, but even then you can still get caught out if you're not careful. Wane as much as you do with your weapon, which brings me back to how well Flashback maintains its focus and narrative. You get the impression that Conrad is the competent human he's positioned as. He is a government agent, meaning that he should be physically fit and should know his way around a weapon, but he isn't a super soldier. He's going to struggle at times, and if you choose the wrong approach for him, then he may well die. Flashback, you have to react to situations the way Conrad would. Don't go in there all guns blazing, think about your approach beforehand, and then carry it out. Isn't it fun when the character controls the way you play, rather than the other way around? The fluid animation also helps bring the character to life. Normally having a huge amount of frames would be a problem, especially for more, well, rubbish games. But Flashback solves the problem simply by slightly increasing the speed. Moves occur faster than they would normally, but you get a quicker response that feels more natural from a ludic point of view. There's not one with the controls at all, and they jive perfectly with the action, which in this genre is, well, not an easy thing to do. Goes. And as a kid it was something of an eye-opener. Even if it didn't have the big action I was used to, I still wanted to play it again and again. I was engrossed in everything about the game, from the story of Conrad just to the sound of the areas, and the audio cues that would later inspire Half-Life. I even stuck loyally with the game when, like quite a lot of other people, I got stuck on that one jump at the start of level 2. You know, the copy protection jump. Revealed the intrinsic secrets behind jumping from one ledge to the other, while confirming that French game developers can be kinda sorta dicks at times, everything was great again. Flashback is one of those evergreen games. Like Doom or Syndicate, I tend to play through Flashback at least once every year, just as a reminder of how awesome things can be. I've completed the game and seen Conrad drift out to space more times than I care to mention, and I've loved it every single time. The series even gave me one of my first 3D gaming experiences. And even if Fade to Black is an absolutely atrocious game that plays like a guitar strung with barbed wire, it was still an introduction to 3D gaming, played out in blistering single-digit FPS on my old 386 or whatever the hell it was. Flashback, however, was, is and remains a classic. And never forget the system that this originally came from. I've been using the Mega Drive version of the game for this review, but this is originally an Amiga game, plain and simple. Just another reason why Amigas are better than PCs, folks. And with that, it's time to end the show. Thanks for watching, and whoever you are, and whoever you may be, have a good one, and take care.